Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. Welcome to the Clutter Fairy Weekly for June 30th, 2020. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is our podcast and webcast that we talk about all things organizing, and we take all of the comments that you write on our various channels and use them to come up with topics that hopefully are important and valuable to you. And we really appreciate that you guys come and help us create the topics that you want to hear.
If you're joining us in the Zoom meeting for the first time, you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature to let me know that you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. We are streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can also share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. And during the live webcast each Tuesday, you can talk to us directly by calling 669-900-6833. Use meeting ID 993-419-863 to join the meeting. We have a lot to talk about on our featured topic, so we're going to go right to it. It's a part of the human condition that our stuff tends to become an extension of ourselves. Just like our experiences and actions, our things start to feel like a part of us. When stuff gets tangled up in our self-image, it gets very hard to let go. We're talking today about finding boundaries between you and your stuff, clutter and self-image.
So here's a disclaimer up front. I am not a trained psychologist, so this material is only meant to offer my observations and opinions based on my experiences of working with clients. It's not understood to be professional mental health advice. So we're going to talk about feelings and self-image and all those kinds of things. We're going to sort of wander in that realm, but I am not a mental health professional, so I just need to say that up front. We each perceive ourselves as a certain kind of person with our own values and personality traits. We have an idea of who we believe we are. As we acquire stuff, we buy things that we think reflect that person. If you think you're hip and trendy, you buy hip and trendy clothes and furniture and artwork. If you think you're a modern woman who likes exercising and being some kind of professional at work, your stuff will reflect that self-image. I'm simplifying here, but you get the point. Your things reflect your life experience, your interests, your personality, and who you believe you are. In a culture where we judge each other by our outward appearance, we use the stuff we own to signal status to other people. We use stuff as a way to measure success. Things become a major part of our outward appearance, an extension of our self-image. The things we own are a physical way to show people how successful we are, how cool we are, how we fit into a society. Stuff also represents security. Your things provide you with resources to survive, a kind of currency against adversity. A house full of things makes you feel prepared to cope with life. I bet you're worried most recently if you have enough stuff to hold out against the pandemic. As humans, we collectively feel a great anxiety living this unknown situation. And how did that anxiety manifest for you? We all madly bought toilet paper for some reason. It's an irrational response to a crazy situation. And we bought some stuff to help manage our anxiety. It felt like we should do something to prepare, even though we didn't know how. And toilet paper bubbled to the top of our collective consciousness as the way that we should prepare for this pandemic.
Yeah, for me, that was grocery shopping. I laid in about, I don't know, 2 months worth of food, even though I realistically knew I would go back to the grocery store in a week or 10 days. And I've gotten that a little under control now. You know, I tend to shop for the week to 10 days instead of the end of the world each time.
But it did feel like squirrels gathering nuts, right? And stashing them away. We really started doing this with our hands and gathering up and filling our pantries to bursting. It was all, we don't know what we're supposed to do, but we know if we go buy some stuff we go put some things in the pantry, we'll be prepared. It was a complete emotional response that we needed things in the house to have some security against this situation. And it's exactly what I'm talking about. Manifest writ large on the world stage. Everybody had that emotional panic attack. And we do need the groceries. We do need the toilet paper, but we didn't need to buy it in the frantic way that we did in the beginning. It was completely an emotional response. And so my point is, you're not alone in treating things as security. That they will serve some purpose, and you did have food in the house and it did minimize your shopping trips, but it probably didn't provide an equivalent amount of security for the amount of stuff that you bought, I guess is what I'm trying to say there. But
No,
it does create the sense of security.
well, and it created a host of other problems, which is
Right?
really
Like,
why we have this conversation, why we have to have this conversation, why we have to talk about this topic, because too much creates a whole bunch of new problems.
right? Where do we put all this stuff? How do we live with all this stuff? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so things also represent our personal history. They're the reflection of the time we've lived and the things we've done and the path we've traveled. Those things are familiar and comforting, and they remind us of who we are and who we've been, and also who we want to be someday. In this way, all the things you own reflect your self-image. I'm a beater, right? I say that to people all the time. And I have a large collection of beads that reflects that I consider that to be part of who I am. And everybody has a version of that. One of my friends is in a motorcycle club, and she has a big motorcycle, and that's part of her personality. Everybody has things that reflect who you are and how you see yourself, and what you consider to be the core of your essence. And we collect around those visions of ourselves. Ed,
Yeah,
what do you think you collect?
well, for a long time it was books.
Yes.
I had, we never counted them, but I think it's safe to say I had maybe around 3,000 books in
Gazillion.
2007 when I made up my
Right?
mind to sell that house,
Yeah.
and we pared that down to something less than 1,000.
Yeah. I mean, it was a big collection. And it reflected you as a learner and a reader and a gatherer of data and information. Like, that's a part of who you are. And books were just a way that you showed that you were interested in information.
Yeah, and keeping them
Mhm.
keeping books, even when you can reasonably say that you don't expect to ever read them again, is a sort of form of self-expression. It's a way of saying I'm proud of what I
Of
have
all these books I
accomplished.
read and all
I've read all
these,
these books.
yes.
See, this is how smart I am, in case it's not obvious. There. And I know other people who do the same thing. I have a lot of friends who are book people, and so I know that it's a form of bragging to keep your books, to keep
And
every book you've ever read.
knowledge collecting, it's like,
Yeah,
here's a physical representation of the knowledge database that I have in my head.
yeah.
Oh,
I
that's good.
wish I remembered everything I've ever read, but no.
Right? But no, yes, it is just a picture, right? It's a, an early form of Pinterest, I
Yeah,
guess.
there you go.
It's the book form of Pinterest, right? Okay, so if our stuff reflects our status, our success, our security, and our personal history, you can see why it's sometimes hard to imagine letting go of things. It feels like we're letting go of some part of ourselves. If I give away that expensive chair that I bought with my bonus one year, I'm giving away a sign of my success. How will people know I'm successful? If I throw out those old photos, I'm tossing my personal history. How will I remember my life's journey? If I give up the extra plates, I'm giving away some of my resources against disaster. What if I need them? This is part of why giving up things is so hard. It feels like we're giving away parts of ourselves and our security. It's also true that stuff links us to the image of who we used to be or who we want to be, regardless of the reality. For example, think about your clothing. If you think, I was happy when I could wear this, I look so good in this, you're remembering your self-image of who you used to be but aren't right now. If you're thinking, I'm going to fit into this someday, you're projecting your fantasy of who you want to be in the future. You may have goals for health and fitness, but there's a distinction between a realistic goal of I'm going to lose 30 pounds in 2020 and a fantasy of I'm going to get into the size 4 clothes that I had before I had back surgery. Here's another example. If you have 5 different kinds of craft supplies, but you're not still doing or have never learned to do all of them, then you're keeping them as a self-image of where you are as a crafter with a larger repertoire than is actually the reality. It's nice to keep the craft supplies for the knitting that you tried and hated doing, but if you aren't going to go back to it in the very near future, there's a disconnect between the fantasy of I am a knitter and the reality around your self-image and the stuff that goes with it. You may be a crafter and you may have tried knitting, but if you didn't like it, then you are actually a knitter. So the fantasy that you will become a knitter someday isn't really, it's disconnected from what's really happening in your life. So understanding the truth about things as separate from our self-image is the key to being able to change our attachment to the stuff. The goal is to accept that the stuff is not the most important part of who you are. You are who you are, and that remains true even if you own nothing that outwardly reflects it. Ed still is a book person and an information guy and a gatherer of data, but he doesn't have to have 3,000 books to reflect that. Do you really need to hang on to crafts you never do anymore or clothes you will likely never wear again? You're still crafty or artistic even if you don't have all the art supplies you've ever used. You still look happy and well even if you can't wear size 4 clothes anymore. The moral of the story from the stuff's point of view: make the stuff support a realistic view of yourself instead of the fantasy version of yourself. If you achieve the fantasy version of yourself, you can add some new stuff. In the meantime, why not live with the stuff that reflects who you actually are right now and live with some empty space around you for a future possible version of you to collect things? I have emptied out, cleared out spaces in people's homes, and here's the empty countertop or here's the empty hunk of the closet, and invariably the client will say to me, what are we going to put in there? And I say, nothing. You can just look at the empty space for a while. And it's quite a shock to people that, oh, you mean you can live with empty space? Yes, you can. You can live with empty space and you can imagine what might go there, who you might be in the future. And you can leave that potential, that possibility free and open for something new to come in. We all have experienced the letting go of things, giving away things, and wondering were we going to regret it. But we often don't think about we are creating an empty space so that something new can arrive, something new can come into our lives. If we give away the stuff that reflects our old life that we don't do anymore, then we are creating empty space to then move on to a new future, a new version of ourselves. And sometimes we have to sit in the emptiness and wait for the transition. Sometimes there's a time between I used to be this person and now I'm going to be this slightly different version of myself, and you have to sit in the change for a little while while you swing from one to the other. And having that empty space reflect your willingness to have a different possibility is really, really important. And it helps you consider something new and make space for something new and signal to the universe that you're willing for it to come.
We talk a lot about making sure that your stuff supports the life that you want. It's the Clutter Fairy motto: clear your clutter,
Right?
love your life. And in terms of self-image, I think you could sort of say that hanging on to stuff that no longer accurately represents you or doesn't represent what you desire to be, what you aspire to be, is sort of, it's inauthentic. And we haven't really talked a whole lot about authenticity, but stuff that takes up space in your home and your life and doesn't represent who you are or who you want to be is sort of inauthentic.
And there's a way to remember who you were and not discount it, and not, you don't have to claim that who you used to be, it's still part of your journey, it's still part of your life, but we all evolve over time, and we all roll from the young version of ourselves as we grow and age and mature, and things change in your life and things get different, and you shift what is important to you, and your life experience changes how you see the world. And so all that change should be reflected in your stuff. As a young person, you start out with nothing and you start collecting because you're trying to establish your place in the world and figure out what's important to you. And there will be lots of that stuff that was part of your younger life that will not matter to you in later. And it doesn't mean that what you did was wrong or bad or invaluable. It just means that you are evolving and maturing, and what was important then was important then, and it's not important now. And so you can say, I remember that that was valuable to me then, and I have things that in my mementos, my personal history, that remind me of those experiences, and I moved on to the next thing. And so now I don't have to live with all the detritus that was from that earlier version of myself. We're not advocating that you disavow the early version of yourself, that you erase the early versions of yourself. We're saying that you recognize that you are a growing, evolving human, and you're not going to be the exact person now that you were 20 years ago or 40 years ago or 60 years ago. And you can have a new round of things around you, or a new volume of things around you, and it'll be okay. It'll make it easier for you to live in your current life and to stand in your current self. And I think that that's important.
Okay, we have a ton of comments.
Okay.
A ton of comments. So on the topic of pandemic acquisitions, Anya said, I bought a sewing machine to be able to repair clothes and to sew masks from old bed linen. And sewing machines continue to be difficult to get your hands on, at least here.
Well, and there's a whole lot of sewers came out of retirement to start making masks. Let me tell you, that became the craft of choice in the United States for sure. And everybody is going through their old fabric stashes to make masks.
It must be more than just that, because it seems like the number of sewing machines that have flown off the shelves and the number of people who've said they're making masks, there must be enough masks for everyone in the United States to have 100 masks at this point. I don't know. Anya also said extending my food supplies a little bit really calmed me down a lot, which I understand. That was definitely what I was doing too. It was
right.
There's a
preparing to not go to the store.
Yeah, well, and knowing that no matter how bad it gets, I'll be able to do this thing that always makes me feel calmer. Cooking.
Yeah, because for you, cooking is a hobby and an interest and a soothing thing to do. It's entertaining to you.
A stress reliever.
Yeah.
Whitney said, I kept imagining my kids asking for water and not having any to give them. I ended up deciding that $30 of water sitting in the basement was worth not waking in a panic at night.
I used to have a friend who, she considered herself financially stable if she had enough toilet paper and toothpaste. For some reason, from her childhood, not having enough toilet paper and not having toothpaste was the signal that her family was financially in trouble. And so she was a grown woman, mature in her 50s, and what brought her comfort and peace and it lessened her anxiety was she had to have enough backstock of toilet paper and toothpaste. And realistically, was she going to use, like, ultimately someday she'd use it all, but she collected it. She stocked more than an average person would stock, is what I'm saying. But it was absolutely an anxiety, a trigger anxiety release for her. Like, if she had this many tubes of toothpaste in the house, she felt safer and she felt okay and she felt at right with the universe. And this is all, she's deceased, it's long before the pandemic. It was just her typical response to, at what point do I feel like I have enough? and it was something like, 5 tubes of toothpaste or something like that. We all have that one little thing that we want to make sure that we have in the house that we don't want to run out of no matter what.
When I was a contact lens wearer, I would freak out the minute I opened the last bottle. So I just I had to go shop the minute I got into the last bottle, even though a bottle lasted for, I don't know, a couple of weeks or something. Dental floss is one that I freak out about. When I'm down to the last 2 or 3 packages, I go buy more.
All right. See, and that's not really rational, and you certainly know that you can go get more dental floss, but there's a
Right.
limit at which you feel like you are insulated against whatever loss that means if you were to run out of dental floss. Whatever that means for you, oh my gosh, I am in my house and I have no dental floss. That is some level of panic that makes you uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
So somebody asked here, how do you stand in your current self and address getting rid of other people's stuff, hand-me-downs from relatives and gifts from kids? So this is the gift factor. When it's a gift or you've inherited the stuff, this is an extra layer of guilt about the things. And when it's a gift, everybody that loves you is going to try to give you something that they think you will like. But not everybody gets it. They don't always hit it. Everybody takes their shot at buying a gift that they think somebody will like. And sometimes you miss. Sometimes you miss hard. You miss far. And sometimes somebody's written, yes, sometimes some are downright ugly. Yes, some of them, they're just awful. So the truth is, when somebody gives you something, they are spending their money and they're giving it to you, but then when you get it, it is now your item and you have the right to do whatever you wish with it. It is your thing. And the truth is, all the people that love you enough to give you a gift will be giving you a gift at major holidays, at your birthday, on your anniversaries, on Valentine's Day. They will be people in your life that will do it over and over again for you. And so if one version fails, there will be other versions coming. So you can decide that this particular gift isn't one that works for who you are, like it was a hit and a miss, they didn't make it, and you can pass it along to somebody else. Now, I would not say that to the person to their face. B, I would be very, very thankful to them, and I would maybe, depending on how often you interact with them or how often they're in your space to see the item, you might want to keep it for a little while before you pass it along. But your spouse, for instance, they're going to give you gifts on your birthday and at Christmas or whatever major holiday, at Valentine's Day, anniversary. It's going to be constant. Several times a year, they're going to be trying to give you a gift, and they're not all going to work. So you can keep some and honor the gift giver and not keep all. And, evaluate them. And if they don't fit who you are, maybe when it's not gift giving time, you can go back later and say, yeah, thank you so much. And that one, wasn't really my color. Maybe it's not my favorite thing. You have to be careful about how you say your gift didn't miss the mark. And maybe it's not that you criticize the ones that you get, it's that you give better hints about what you would prefer to have instead. So that they have a little bit more data to work with. The other part of that conversation was the hand-me-downs from relatives. When you start receiving inherited stuff from other relatives, you're basically receiving the history of stuff that reflects someone else's life and not yours. And so, although it's a very standard response to, this is my mother's stuff. I have things in my house that were from my mother's house from when we closed down her house. My sister took things, I took things, but it was a whole house, and Leisha and I each had our own house full of stuff, and neither one of us wanted mother's entire house to end up in our house. It was bad enough to absorb what our portion was that came to us. And so I had to give away some of my furniture in order to receive some of the furniture that I got that I wanted better. And you have to evaluate, yes, the stuff came from your relative, but is it interesting to you? As the person left standing holding the bag, are you interested in all of these items? And if you are not, you can, I'm sure there's some that you are, pick the ones that you want, and then start offering to other family members. Do other family members want the stuff? If there's no family members, then all bets are off and you can hand it along. It's time to pass it away to the next unrelated family person. I mean, at some point you can't absorb an entire house. And at this time in the universe, all of our parents lived through post-war prosperity and gathered up a whole lot of stuff. And now we're inheriting the things that they bought and the things that they inherited from their parents. And it's a much bigger group of stuff than it was, 100 years ago. And so we have to manage it somehow, and absorbing someone's entire life into your entire life is destined not to fit. It's going to be too hard to manage. And so pick what you want, donate the rest. That's the short version.
Deborah said, I counted 5,000 books before moving here.
Ooh.
I knew there was a reason I liked Deborah. Now I have 2 shelves, but the Kindle has lots.
A gazillion.
And that's the direction I've gone too. I not to go on and on and on about books because I could, but I think I've talked before about having sort of changed my habits around the acquisition of books. And so now when I hear about a book that sounds interesting, once upon a time I would have gone to Amazon.com and ordered it to be sent to me. And now I check the libraries that I have cards with.
The digital libraries, like you check it digitally.
Yeah, I checked the digital libraries to see if I can borrow it as an ebook first.
Right.
And then I check the libraries to see whether if there isn't a digital version, I check whether I can check out the paper book. And
then give it back when you're done.
Yes, and if I can't do any of those things, I put it on a list to keep an eye on, because even if it's not available yet at the library, it probably will be in 6 months if it's a new bestseller or something like that. And so it's sort of changing the way I think about them. And I do have about 1 million books on my Kindle in my Kindle
And you know
app.
what? That's a great place to store it, right? And
yes.
Truthfully, if you were to suddenly go to God, disappear, pass away, taking your Kindle book is going to be a much more easy cleanup than 5,000 books in a bookcase somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Somebody can manage your Kindle and not be overburdened with dealing with your stuff, and you still get access to all the data you want. And it's a great solution for that. I think that, in this age of Amazon Prime and instant buying and online, and so now everybody is, especially in the pandemic, we have all switched to, oh, you just need to deliver that to my house so I don't have to go out and get it. And, Amazon makes their money by making click and buy super, super easy. None of us want for anything. We have everything that we want, and it makes gift buying for us really hard, because nobody, if they can afford it, no one is letting themselves be deprived from anything that they suddenly desire. And Amazon makes it super quick to instantly respond to, oh, I had a thought in my head that I want that, click, and it's on its way. And so you don't even have the moment to take a breath and think about it, and you can order it and have it be coming. And so buying us gifts in this environment is a little bit harder. Trying to buy a book for you would be really hard. My father keeps a list of things that he wants, a wish list on Amazon, so that we can go out to his list and pick things off his list that he wants. And 95% of them are books, which is lovely. And we'll go and buy the book and bring it to him, and he's happy as a clam. And occasionally there's some other things on there. And so that way it's a pre-vetted list. If you would just create a wish list and then don't shop off of it, don't buy the stuff yourself, then somebody can buy a gift for you that you actually want. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I
Okay,
see something about the
last
test
thing on
round table.
books.
Okay.
Anya said books are multi-purpose in times of need: entertainment, making a fire, use for toilet paper. Circling back to the toilet paper theme.
I
Great
never
comment
thought
from
we'd talk about toilet paper so much. Go ahead.
Catherine. DH and I have had a business for almost 23 years. Back when computers were bigger, I had a desk, a huge desk, an
Yes.
important desk that helped me feel important. And so that's a perfect example of what we're talking about. That
Mm-hmm. It's part of your self-image as a business owner and being a professional.
and here's Whitney said, as I give away baby stuff, I am acknowledging this baby is my last.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I have had some clients who we kept the baby stuff against the possibility of a future baby. And from the outside, it seemed to me like that was not a realistic goal, that it didn't make sense that a third baby would be coming. But she wasn't ready to give up on that dream yet. And so sometimes you keep things against things that you want to do, places you want to go, projects you want to have take place. And as you get older, you have to start evaluating, is that really a goal that I'm still capable of doing, willing to do, want to do the work to make it happen? And there's a little bit of sadness in, yeah, that was one of my life fantasies that now is not realistic, and I need to let it go. And I think if you can face those and let it happen, there is some relief that comes with, I'm having that loss, but I'm also surrendering the guilt of not doing it, of not being willing to do it, of not wanting to do it anymore. There's some lingering bad feelings that come with being reminded that here was an idea that you had, or here was a project you were going to work on, and you're never actually going to work on it. And then it sort of mocks you every day as you look at the stuff that goes with that project. And letting those pieces go and saying, I am now taking it off my to-do list as an unaccomplished project because I don't want to do it, frees you up from some, taskless guilt that you don't really have to hang on to for forever.
Anya said, I gave away most of my home exercise equipment I never used. And Catherine said, I think this is sort of on a related note. A few years ago, I realized that I had a lot of things I bought for the life I thought I wanted to live. And on exercise equipment, I long ago moved in with someone who had a Soloflex. And I remember thinking, oh boy, now I can do this every day because it's right here in the house. And I
Right?
think I did it approximately twice, because the reality is, if I'm home, there are always 100 other things I would rather be
The
doing
computer, the books,
than the Soloflex.
right.
And that did not, fortunately, it wasn't mine. But if it had been, I would have had to at some point admit that I'm not going to use this. This is not how I exercise. I have to get out of the house and go take a walk or a run or a bike ride or go kayaking. It's not something I want to do in my house,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes people hold on to the exercise equipment for a really, really long time because it feels like a defeat to get rid of it. But I think if you're getting the exercise you need some other way, then by all means get rid of it.
Well, and even if you aren't getting it some other way, clearly doing it in your home isn't doing it for you. So like you go out and walk because that gets you out of the house and away from all the distractions, and it is a method of exercising that allows you once you get out there, you can't be distracted to go get on the computer, right? Like it puts you in a place where you can actually accomplish the exercise. And
Yeah.
if this machine at home is only holding clothes for you and preventing you from hanging up your clothes, then why let it sit there and mock you all day long? Just recognize that the machine is not going to make you exercise, and you're going to have to find something else. We all have to come to that place of, this is how I'm going to get my exercise, and if it isn't a $2,000 machine, then sell it to somebody that wants to get on it and get it out of there. Because they just take up a lot of space, and it's only useful if it actually helps you solve the problem.
Yeah.
Basically.
A comment I didn't want to lose from Charity on Facebook. She said, my husband bought a ton of food for the pandemic, and it actually caused me panic because all the cleared out spaces became stuffed with stuff. I felt like I had gone backward from a year and a half of decluttering.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure that was it certainly wasn't his intention to stress you out, and I'm sure that he felt like he was taking an action that was appropriate to get you guys out of the stores and make it feel safe, minimize your exposure. And when you suddenly start buying and holding against several weeks worth of cooking, you have a big pile of stuff, right? And so, yeah, that's kind of a bummer, isn't it? It might help if you go to that stash and see if there's a way for you to maybe box in a container that you like the look of, box up some of that stuff, the extras, so have in the open pantry all of the options that you have, and then have the multiples boxed away in a box somewhere so that you can have, a little bit of your free space back. You can go stash one in a box in a bedroom somewhere until it's time to restock. I get it that, he probably came home with the groceries and unloaded them into everywhere that was open. And then, oh my God, he erased your work in a minute. And I'm sure that was a little panic inducing. I could see how that would be. And slowly you're using it up, and hopefully, it's shrinking back down, and he's also calmer and maybe not buying at the same rate and keeping as much back stock. So maybe you can suggest that he not buy as far in future now. I mean, we've all experienced that. We were worried that all of the supplies were going to run out, and the truth is they're not, and businesses are still providing, and grocery stores still have food, and you may not have 100% exactly what you want all the time, but you generally can. Nobody's starving to death nobody's going to an empty grocery store. That's what I'm saying. There's things to be had. It doesn't look exactly like it used to, but there's things to be had, and so maybe he can address it in a stockpile not as large as you guys use up and replace.
Well, and on the topic of the things that you keep because they remind you of your past identity, who you
Right.
used to be. I think I sounded like I was saying, get rid of all that stuff because it's not who you are now. And of course, the usual Clutter Fairy advice there is keep a representative sample.
You always want to. I'm doing this with my mother's photographs right now. My little sister, when it was time to send me my portion of the stuff from North Carolina, we had to rent a moving truck, and we had to hire a moving company to ship it across the country. And so the stuff that was coming to Houston got loaded into this truck, and my little sister sneaked a bunch of boxes onto the truck that I didn't know she was going to ship me, that were all of my mother's photographs. And she's like, yeah, Gayle can deal with that. So I have all these boxes of photographs of my mother went on a trip to India. My mother went on a trip to Park City. My mother went to, Iona. And so she had a whole lot of photographs of places that she went. And we laugh about it. She took pictures of flowers and trees and sheep and goats. And, every 300 pictures, mother will be in one. And so what I care about now is the one picture. And maybe, you know, I want to remember that she went to India, but I don't need the 500 photographs that she took of India. I can pick, you know, 4 or 5 of them and be perfectly happy and go, oh yes, this was her trip in 1987 to India. And so you can create a representative sample and still be able to remember that you did, you had, you know, this kind of stuff. And it will take up a lot less space. If you're bored and you don't have anything to do, then you can scan the 500 photos and have a digital version of it. But it's just as much work to create a digital version of stuff as it is to keep a representative sample. I mean, you know, you can keep a little sample and not have to spend all that time creating scans of something. So it's really just how much you want to do. And I'm sure you hear Cookie on the other end. Cookie's like walking around howling.
I think
Sorry, guys.
Cookie is telling us that we're out of time.
There you go. Thank you, Cookie. Yeah.
We are out of time.
I can see that the chat is very active. I can't read all of it and keep going, but I appreciate that you guys all support each other and share concepts and experiences of your own life. It's really, I know it's really helpful for everybody. So thank you. Yes, Cookie is very adorable. He's my furry orange long-haired cat, but he doesn't want to come in here. He just wants to yowl.
Before we go, brief announcements.
Okay.
I want to remind our viewers and listeners that our YouTube channel has more than 100 videos on lots of organizing topics.
Yes, it
does. You can go to cfhou.com/YouTube.
In case you're bored and you want to gather data.
Right. Click subscribe on YouTube to receive notifications when we post something new. I also want to remind everyone that we're taking next week off. We're celebrating the 4th of July and giving ourselves a little break.
It's a mid-year break for us. We're just taking a mid-year break.
Yeah, just a little breather. And our next webcast will be on Tuesday, July 14th at noon Central Time, live in Zoom and streaming on Facebook. We're going to talk about measuring your progress. An important key to sustaining your momentum on organizing projects is maintaining awareness of how far you've already come. So we'll offer suggestions on ways to measure, track, and report your decluttering progress. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live. To receive notifications about upcoming events, please join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. And I know our meetup group is called the Houston Clutter Coaching Meetup Group, but since all of our meetings are virtual now, we welcome people from all over the world, obviously.
Right.
You can also follow us on Facebook by going to cfhou.com/Facebook or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. I also want to shout out to Deborah, Elizabeth, and Karen, who are our newest Patreon sponsors. Thank you so much for your financial support of our projects. It's really exciting. We'd love to hear from you, so please send us your questions and topic suggestions in the YouTube comments or on any of our other channels. And you can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Thank you, everybody. It was so great to hear from you. And we will go back through the chat because I can see there's some questions that don't have answers. And so I'll try to go back into the chat and see if I can answer some of those questions.
All right.
Okay. We'll see you next time. Not next week, but the week after. All right. Bye.